Welcome 8th graders to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be with you today because, well, we're diving into one of my all-time favorite topics in literature, character and conflict. Think about your absolute favorite books for a second. You know, the stories you literally just can't put down. What is it that makes them so gripping? It's the struggles, right? It's the challenges the characters face. So today, we're going to look at what happens when we take two entirely different stories, featuring completely different characters, and put them side by side to see how they handle those exact same struggles. So grab your notes, because this is Unit 3, Week 11, and we are talking all about comparing conflicts across texts. Here's a quick look at a roadmap for today. We're going to cover the power of comparing, why we compare literary conflicts in the first place, and then we'll analyze some universal human struggles. After that, we'll go over your literature homework mission, discuss character, conflict, and grace, and finally wrap things up with the godly learner philosophy.
Okay, let's dive right into this with Section 1, the power of comparing. You know, we compare things all the time in real life, don't we? Sports teams, our favorite meals, even the quickest route to get to practice. But there's actually a profound, almost magical power in bringing two ideas together side by side. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 tells us, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor." Now, we usually think of this verse when we're talking about teamwork, but guess what? It applies perfectly to reading too. When you put two texts to work together, your return on that labor is massive. You actually unlock a much deeper understanding of literature than you ever could by just reading one story all by itself.
And that brings us right to our big idea for the week. Comparing conflicts across different stories helps you see how authors handle similar struggles in totally unique ways. It's kind of like, imagine two different artists painting a picture of the exact same mountain. One artist might use dark, stormy watercolors, while the other uses bright, bold oil paints. They're looking at the exact same mountain, but they're giving you a totally unique experience. Authors do the exact same thing with human problems. So today, you're learning to spot how different authors uniquely tackle the exact same types of conflicts.
Let's move on to Section 2. Why compare literary conflicts?
I know that as 8th graders, your critical thinking skills are really sharpening right now, and you naturally want to know the why behind the work we do. So the crucial point is captured right here in these three learning objectives. First, you're going to learn how to find similar conflicts hiding in completely different texts. Next, you'll compare how each author decides to resolve that conflict. And finally, you'll connect those conflicts to broader themes. Once you master these, well, you aren't just reading a book anymore, you're essentially decoding it. And here's why that matters so much for you personally. When you practice this, you significantly sharpen your analytical skills. You're actually training your brain to find patterns in literature. You start to appreciate how a completely different setting, like, say, a spaceship versus a medieval castle, and entirely different characters can approach the exact same human struggles. Spotting these patterns builds an incredibly sharp analytical mind, which, let's be honest, is basically a superpower both inside and outside the classroom. All right, Section 3, Analyzing Universal Human Struggles. Let's actually put this into practice. Imagine putting two texts side by side right now on your desk, and this brilliantly illustrates our first comparison, man versus society. Book 1 features a rebel leader fighting a massive, oppressive government. Super high stakes, right? But then, Book 2 features a student challenging some unfair school rules. The scale and the tone are completely different, but the core conflict? Both characters are resisting authority. You can clearly see how standing up for what's right works on both a global, life-for-death scale and a super relatable, everyday middle school scale. Let's look at another one. Here we have Man versus Nature. Book 1 gives us survivors stranded in a freezing snowstorm. It's fast, it's urgent, and it's bitterly cold. Book 2, on the other hand, gives us farmers battling a long, dry drought. It's slow, agonizing, and scorching hot. While both sets of characters are battling the natural elements, a sudden snowstorm and a creeping drought require completely different survival strategies and emotional endurance. And for our third example, we have man versus self, the ultimate internal battle. In Book 1, a hero struggles with deep guilt over a past mistake. In Book 2, a young athlete battles crippling self-doubt right before a big game. Both are fighting their own minds. This just shows us how relatable internal battles are to our own personal growth. Because whether you're a knight in shining armor or just a kid on a basketball court, overcoming yourself is very often the hardest conflict to resolve. Looking across these worked examples, we see something pretty amazing. When we compare texts, we discover universal human truths, like the fact that everyone, everywhere deals with authority, nature, and self-doubt.
But we also discover incredible cultural and situational differences in how those conflicts are portrayed and eventually solved. You literally get the big picture of humanity right there on the page.
Which brings us to Section 4, your literature homework mission.
Now it's your turn to be the literary detective. Let's move to Pelego and see how this builds your analytical muscles step by step. For your homework, you have 5 exact steps to follow. Step 1, select 2 texts you've read that share a similar conflict, like man versus self or man versus society. Step 2, write a brief description of the conflict in each. Step 3, compare how the characters respond. Do they fight? Do they hide? Step 4, explain the resolution for each story. And finally, Step 5, identify one central theme that ties both stories together. Just follow these 5 steps and you are going to do great.
But hold on, before you run off to do that homework, I want to pivot our lesson for a second. We've talked a lot about academics, but I want to challenge you to think beyond the classroom walls. Ask yourself, how does understanding literary conflict actually help us in real life?
Let's explore that in Section 5, Character, Conflict, and Grace.
You see, literary conflict isn't just some plot device to make a story interesting. It's actually a mirror for real-world character development. The hard truth of our biblical morality tip today is that conflict is simply a part of life. You literally can't avoid it, but how we respond to it, that reveals our true character. Just like the heroes in our favorite books, we are called to face our challenges with courage, patience, and forgiveness. Whether your conflict is an internal battle with doubt or an external disagreement with a good friend, responding with humility and grace completely changes the narrative. Our ultimate goal should always be peace and reconciliation that honors God. So when you read about conflict, you're actually studying how to handle your own conflicts better.
And that leads us to our final section, Section 6, the Godly Learner Philosophy. This perfectly wraps up everything we do, connecting today's specific reading lesson to the overarching purpose of your entire education. Here at HeroesMart Academy, we fully believe in the Godly Learner Philosophy. And that means we intentionally intertwine biblical morality directly with your education. Why? Well, because honestly, education without morality can actually hurt. It can make someone very capable of doing the wrong things. True knowledge and true intelligence shouldn't just make you capable, they should make you wise. They should equip you to make wise, God-honoring choices in every single area of your life.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the profound contrast presented in Romans chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. If we let our minds be driven only by worldly things, by stirring up conflict, by always needing to win arguments, by pride, it ultimately leads to spiritual death. But keeping the mind spiritually centered, that guarantees life, and it guarantees peace, even when you're standing right in the middle of a conflict.
So, 8th graders, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As you step out of this explainer today, as you dive into your homework analyzing conflicts in literature, and as you inevitably face real conflicts in your own daily life, how will you use your academic excellence to pursue truth, wisdom, and righteous choices today? Keep your mind centered on God, keep looking for those deeper meanings in what you read, and I will see you in our next lesson. Have an absolutely great day.